It's all yours.
Thank you. Oh, hello, everyone. How was our day? So my name is Fortune St Keyne. I am from the East Kingdom. I'm lovely to be out here in virtual Ontier. We'll call that. Although I do see a bunch of folks from all over the place. Outlands, Eldemere, Ontier. Excellent. So a little bit about me. I have been in the SCA for about pandemic doesn't really count, 14, 15 years. I am a Rose out of the East. I am a Countess. I was recently elevated to the Pelican, but my true passion in life in the SCA is Renaissance Venice. I love all things Venice. I'm sure those of you who are into the Italian Renaissance have partaken in the Italian Renaissance gateway drug that is Dangerous Beauty, the movie. It is absolutely was my gateway drug, highly recommend. Big fan. And I was like, oh, I have an option. I have a courtesan persona. I am a member of the Known World Courtesans, which is KWC. You can find this on Facebook or just about everywhere. And part of my role as a courtesan in the SCA is teaching and bringing information out there. One of the things I wanted to do some research in at one point were, what are my options as a single woman in Renaissance Venice or Renaissance Italy itself? Because it wasn't really clear. There's some assumptions that everybody gets married. And in fact, probably only about a third of people, if you were a very wealthy woman, were going to end up as married because there is only so much dowry to go around. And a lot of you are going to end up in a nunnery. So the odds are not ever in your favor as a high-class woman in Venice. About 60% of upper-class women are going into the nunnery in the late 1500s, which sounds awful until you hear a little bit more about what's happening in the convents at that time, because you have a large population of women who just kind of don't want to be there. Things operate a little differently than how we think of a modern convent. If you've watched the Renaissance Gateway drug, you'll know that the name of Marco Venier. Marco Venier, the Venier family, produced 52 nuns and 29 brides between 1590 and 1670. Because you had to do something with single women. You cannot allow them just to be single. They are dangerous if left on their own. They start doing things like thinking, getting into trouble, amassing in groups, unacceptable. And there are some fantastic women writers of this time that you can find who have written various treatises about their situations and what's going on at that time. You can also have the gentleman writers of the time. So one of the books I really like is How to Do It. And I mentioned in the bibliography for the class handout. But How to Do It is a compilation of different ephemeral pamphlets that were published, like street pamphlets that you would see in Italy. And you get a very much a better idea of what's happening in the common person's mind at that time. And some of them are just funny. But like there are quotes in there like, women are very wicked, generally behaving badly and displaying excessive pride. But these defects are just a part of their nature. They do not constitute a sufficient reason not to marry them. Like, what? That's just plain rude. So there are three women you can find pamphlets from different strata at the time that sort of give you an idea of what their situation is like. We have a noble matron, Modesta di Pozzi di Forzi, wrote under the pen name Moderata Fonte and writes a thing called The Worth of Women, wherein is clearly revealed their nobility and their superiority to men. I wonder what her thoughts could be. It's so unclear as to what the rest of that pamphlet might say. Then we have someone who's sort of the citizen level, not quite citizen level, but the working class level. We have Lucrezia Martinella. She's the daughter of a prominent physician. She is married to a doctor herself. She writes, "The nobility and excellence of women and the defects and vices of men." Again, very clear what her opinion is and what her position might be. And then Arcangela Tarabotti, who is my absolute favorite. She is the rebel nun. She desperately does not want to be in the convent. She wrote texts such as paternal tyranny and corresponded with cultural figures, political figures all over modern Europe. Her writings are talking about how she is enforced enclosure. She was sent to the nunnery as a young girl. She takes vows very early. She is pressured to take vows very early. And she is continually a source of problem for that convent. They are constantly having to come down being like, no, you really have to cut your hair, honey. You're a nun. Like, you have to have the modest haircut. No, you really have to wear the robes. No, I do not. The cardinal's involved, the bishop's involved, where everybody's mad, except maybe like it hasn't quite gotten to the Pope level yet, but it's bad. She is hosting people to come for salons, like, oh, if you're going to be in town, come by. We'll chat. We'll have tea. They cannot stand having this woman in the convent. But she's sort of more typical of your average nun at the time, who was just sort of like, I'm here because there's nowhere else to put me. I'm not really thrilled about the whole God thing, but I'm here. So in period, we have this idea when we come into studying the Middle Ages that and the Renaissance, that everyone's getting married at like 12 and 13, and that's really not true. Those very young marriages are really only happening among the very, very upper classes to secure lineage, because marriage is not about love this time. It is about property, and it is about securing a family line and property. And you will find this more and more in Venice. Venice has to pass several laws about dowries and how much you spend on dowries, because people are overspending at the time. So one male writer at the time is writing about how women must be superior because in the law, a woman can marry without parental consent at 16, but men cannot marry without parental consent at 18. Clearly, women must be superior if they're allowed to marry younger. I was like, nice try. So the preferred path to happiness. So if you're one of three sisters, you've got a 1 in 3 chance of getting married. Your preferred path to happiness is going to be marriage. You're going to hope that you're the one who gets picked. Your job is to marry. Your job is to marry well. You are forbidden in Venice from marrying beneath yourself. You cannot marry without an extremely hefty dowry. It is impossible. That will not happen. Disparaging about dowries. He talks about in his great-great-grandfather's time, you didn't see fathers taking fright at the birth of a daughter, because a daughter's a liability. You know you were going to spend a ton of money on a daughter. Dowries had fled all limitation. In the mid-1300s, your dowry is about 650 to 1540 ducats. In 1420, the Venetian Senate puts a limit of 1600 ducats on your dowry. Absolutely did nothing to prevent people from exceeding that. It rises again in the mid-1500s to 3,000 ducats. And that, now I haven't done this calculation recently. The last time I did this was 2016. It's about $450,000. So if you can imagine that every time you have a daughter who is going to get married, that is the money portion of her dowry, $450,000. That does not incorporate the goods and other things that you're taking in. So you have your trousseau, your clothing. Clothing is extremely expensive. We have such a skewed view of how much clothing is worth in the modern times. You are going with furniture. You have your cassone. You have the big chests that are at the end of the beds that have things. You would go with spalieri. You would go with your paintings that go around the bedrooms and things. So you're looking at, you know, probably twice that to get married, and that's per daughter. And you're supposed to have this money on hand? That's not going to happen. No one set of parents is going to have this on hand. The other thing is, if you look at other people in the same time, so Leonardo da Vinci, when he was working for the King of France, he's making 400 ducats a year at the time. And yet your dowry is going to be 3,000 and just the money portion. The other thing you have to look at is when you are getting married, that is your entire claim on your parents' estate, your father's estate. So they pass away later, you're not getting anything else. This is it. This is your share of that estate to be parsed out now. And as such, your husband is supposed to be keeping this in trust for your children. And if they are not doing that, you can actually sue them for divorce and win it. A lot of women did at the time. We don't hear about that, but in the records, women were suing for divorce. If you filed a petition for separation, you were often granted it, and more women were filing than men in 16th century Venice. In 1629, so slightly out of period, Clara Vidali brought suit against her wastrel husband of 4 years, Niccolò Montine, won her dowry back, got separation from him. She went into the whole court case saying he has falsely converted to Christianity at the time. He was a wealthy merchant at the time. He has been gambling away my money. There is almost nothing left for my children. I need out, and I need what is owed me paid back. And she got it. So this is sort of the backdrop of what we're looking at, is if you are getting, your parents are pulling all of that money from the rest of the family. It's sort of like a potlatch system where, and they kept track. Oh, there are court records of them keeping track of like how much you gave for each person. And I recently came across TikToks of this happening in certain people, like Italian families, going through the book of like, what did they give me at my wedding? Okay, this is what we'll calculate we give for them. Okay, we had $400, they came, we had a meal, it was a good meal. And you calculate, okay, what did I get from them? Let's make sure they give us the same or better. Otherwise, there's going to be a problem. So if we go back to Aristotle, who, you know, we're in the Renaissance, we are looking back to the Greek and Roman writers as exalted philosophers with great ideas. Don't always have great ideas. Some of their ideas are very bad. I run another set of research on sex and sexuality in the Renaissance and in period. And the name Galen comes up over and over again with just awful advice. And it is stupid how long Galen's advice lasts. Similarly, for some of these ancient philosophers where they're like, oh no, this is a great idea. This is definitely how we should be doing things. It absolutely is not. But we do have an idea that the bride is always supposed to be younger than the groom, and it depends on where we are exactly what that age difference ends up being. Recording stopped. There we go. Like, the idea of marrying an 18-year-old is exhausting to me. Just absolutely exhausting. But